Have you seen those grocery prices? Oh my gosh, coffee at $15. It's just really gone crazy. But as we prepare for Thanksgiving, the White House has rolled back a few of those duties on a lot of the food imports in an effort to ease grocery prices. The shift comes as debates continue over how U.S. tariff policy is affecting the cost of living and the broader economy. A lot to break down, so we've asked Margaret Kidd to join us. She's an adjunct professor at the University of Houston's Cullen College of Engineering and an expert on tariffs, if anyone can be these days. Margaret, thank you. Welcome back to Hello Houston.
Well, thank you for hosting me, Frank.
I'm glad you're here.
You know, before we get into the impacts the tariffs will have, specifically looking at Christmas and the holidays, for months, the full impact of President Trump's tariffs was not clear at first. It was very unclear. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of, uncertainty. Just you wait. What are the impacts going to look like? And you know what? But one thing that the president is very clear on, that America is winning. So, Margaret, tell us, is that accurate?
Well, I don't know what your pocketbook looks like, but I certainly have felt the impact of tariffs. And I think most Americans, and especially those of us here in Houston, when we go down to Kroger's or H-E-B, we've seen an increase in our grocery tab, probably in excess of 25% over the last couple of years. Now, granted, it was nice to hear that they were going to repeal some of these tariffs on coffee, tropical fruits, cocoa, bananas, oranges, tomatoes, and beef. But the fact is there's a lot of front loading in terms of building up inventories to get ahead of the tariffs. So we're not going to see immediate relief to the consumers.
So explain to us who pays the tariffs. A lot of people think that if you have a tariff on China, that means China has to pay a lot of extra money to send something to America. I don't think they realize that we're paying it.
No, the consumer ultimately pays the tariff. So when goods come in to a port, there's tariffs depending where they're coming from, what the good is, and those tariffs are either absorbed by a company like, say, H-E-B or Home Depot, or they're passed along to the consumer. So when we're talking about food inflation and food prices, I mean, they're very small margins that these stores operate on. So, I mean, the consumer is actually feeling that pinch. And I brought a couple of charts just to give you some historical context, like how bad inflation really is for food. And so I wanted to start the price of a turkey, and I'm going to pass this over to Ernie, at $1.69 a pound, and this is from the St. Louis Fed, and this gives you a chart going back 50 years. So you see we're at the highest. If we want to look at cocoa, it's even more astronomical at $9,000 per metric ton. Certainly an item that's used in all of our holiday cooking.
Wow.
And what about coffee? $9 a pound. Again, going historically back almost 50 years, you see kind of the impact during COVID. That's when that chart, it starts slanting upwards. Oranges, oh my goodness, over $1.80 a pound.
Now, Margaret, so there are some people that would say inflation and the cost of living is just a natural process. Are these numbers direct impacts from the tariffs?
It's a combination of tariffs, definitely, but also supply chain disruption, the bird flu, droughts, climate change, floods, droughts, cattle have been impacted by droughts. Chicken, poultry has been impacted by the bird flu. And then there's rising labor cost and transportation cost. And then when we look at farmers, added cost of even fertilizer to grow crops to feed these animals that then end up in the meat market at H-E-B.
Well, Trump made the point that inflation is virtually nothing. There were virtually no inflation. And maybe it is lower than it was under Biden. He says it's because of the tariffs.
Not at all. Inflation's at 2.9%, unemployment's at 4.4%, and U.S. consumer sentiment is at its almost lowest level ever at an index of 51. So consumers are concerned about their personal finances. They're also concerned about high prices and job security. Now, everyone in this room knows, I mean, how many layoffs have we read about here in Houston in the oil and gas sector,
Right.
in technology, even in the logistics space?
Talk to me then. Let's go back a little bit to the tariffs. And we hear the president talk about all the money that has been made to the point that maybe everyone's going to get a $2,000 check in the mail to show them how prosperous we all are. How exactly does the government end up with money from tariffs? Who's paying it when along the process? And how do we then disseminate it? I mean, I don't understand the whole theory of what's supposedly being said at that level.
Well, through the end of August, there was approximately $195 billion collected in tariffs. And this is from U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
Right there. How do we collect that money? Who is giving who money?
Well, the companies that import goods, whether it's raw materials or finished products, pay these tariffs.
When they arrive in this country.
When they arrive in this country.
To the U.S. government.
Right. And then that those component parts or goods, I mean, that price has to be passed along to the consumer. The tariffs are paid to the U.S. government by the company importing.
Hasn't the Supreme Court taken up some of these tariffs and hasn't quite ruled yet whether they're actually going to be allowed?
We're in a wait-and-see pattern at this moment. I mean, this has really been unprecedented. And when we look at the magnitude of the tariffs and the relationships that we've kind of redefining our relationships with the world.
So to Ernie's point, if the Supreme Court finds of the $171 billion that 90 billion are illegal, do we give that money back? Is that paid out to us and now we have to give it back? Or is all of this kind of on credit determined later?
Well, my understanding is there is a procedure for refunds. I can only imagine with the amount of trade we've seen come in, and there was a lot of front loading where major companies were trying to bring goods in to get ahead of the curve on the tariffs. There's going to be an accounting fiasco.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what you were just saying a minute ago about who pays the tariffs. And the reason I'm trying to get there is because of this idea, because you started it there, that, well, foreign governments pay the tariffs. But then those products that come in, to recoup that money given to the government, they increase the price of the product in this country. And so therefore, that is why it is the U.S. consumer that's paying it, even though the initial outlying of money comes from foreign governments, correct?
Absolutely. So these companies have the choice of absorbing it or passing it along. And let's be very clear, who's in business not to make a profit, right? So it is passed on to the consumer. So your lower income families really bear even more of a brunt of this because you look at the percentage of their income that goes to just basic necessities like groceries.
So now that we're on the accounting mess subject, can we be sure that the increase in prices is legitimate? In other words, companies aren't just saying, you know what, Americans are expecting a little bump in prices. We can bump ours up a little bit. I mean, would it behoove us to shop around?
Well, I would always advocate for shopping around. I think the consumer now is really looking for value. This is why organizations like Walmart are really reeling it in at the moment. I mean, when we think about value, you go to Walmart.
My problem with all of that, I'm sorry, Jeff. Okay, is that when the price goes up like it is now, and the marketplace can afford it, ends up paying it, when the situation that caused that price to go up goes away, oftentimes I get the feeling the price stays higher because they've seen the marketplace will support it.
Yeah, that was my
so
point.
that becomes this vicious cycle of we don't get back to what the prices were before the tariffs. We don't get back to 89 cents for a dozen eggs.
Well, there's also, you need to factor in this new geopolitical order, and there's increased cost for transportation. So just because the tariff has peeled back, what it didn't peel back was the labor component. It didn't peel back the transportation component. So, if your beef is $7 a pound and the tariffs are repealed, is it going down to $3.50? Absolutely not. We still have to factor in these other costs that go in there. There has absolutely been an argument that some retailers, especially in the food sector, have been rather aggressive on pricing. I think it makes sense to clip coupons and look where you can get the best value, especially if you have a large family.
Margaret, as we go into the holiday season, we're looking at people are doing their holiday shopping. And from what we understand, the president announced in late October he was increasing duties on Canadian goods and others. Now he's quietly holding off on them. And we're seeing, holdings on certain things on the tariffs. How does that affect the consumer right now in this moment, or does it have any effect and it's really just him positioning, making sure he's not looking bad, essentially?
I think consumers are cautious, but if you look at what the experts are really saying, like the National Retail Federation,
yes,
and you can go to their website. I brought a chart. They're estimating holiday sales 3.7, 4.2% over last year. They anticipate 91% of consumers are going to buy something this holiday, spending on average $890, with 186 million people shopping from Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday. And what are they going to buy? They're going to buy Legos, Barbies, Hot Wheels, and a doll.
But can this be misleading? Because the prices have gone up on things. So even though what they're spending may be high, profit margins may actually be lower.
The profit margins may be, but we're approaching an estimate of over $1 trillion in spending.
But 10 years ago, how much did that same trillion buy?
A lot more than it does today.
Right, so that's the thing. You're spending more because the cost of everything has gone up, but are we moving more product? Are we really seeing this as a good sign, or is it that's what the price of things are? So, of course, it's going to be more spent because you still have to buy the kiddos their Legos.
Absolutely. Where would we be without Legos Christmas morning?
Yeah, well, on bare feet. So, in fairness, is there some upside to the tariffs? Is it keeping inflation down? It's obviously the government we have right now is right behind it.
Tariffs are inflationary, period. Okay. I think part of what the Trump administration is looking to do is to bring more manufacturing back to the U.S. But as consumers, we're so in love with our inexpensive tennis shoes and clothes. And food, we're so spoiled. We get tropical fruit from Chile and Mexico when it's winter here. So, we are dependent on some of these foreign sources.
Help me with this concept. Shops online like a Temu, where everyone said, with the tariffs, all their prices are going to go so much higher that it's not going to be that cheap place to go anymore. And then you start seeing they're saying, shipped from U.S. warehouses. So all of a sudden they don't have to increase any of their prices because they have U.S. warehouses. What's the game being played there?
Well, there's not so much of a game. They front-loaded this inventory, and so there's robust inventories of inexpensive clothing from Temu, easily 90, 120 days worth.
But then when that ends, then will we start seeing that? I know there was a thing about, was it Amazon was going to start putting the price, how much of it was because of tariffs?
I had read that, and then I also had read that there was pressure for them not to do that. Right. So I'll be curious to see what they do.
Down the road, what happens.
So we did get this text, Ernie, to your earlier point. Foreign governments, you sort this out for us, Margaret. Foreign governments do not pay tariffs. I actually import products from Canada. The importer of record pays the tariff. Sometimes that's the same company that made it, but often not. In my case, it's me. True?
It's the importing company that pays it, and then they're going to pass it along to the purchaser of their products.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And we did get another text that says the point of tariffs is to increase the price of imported goods to make domestic goods more competitive. It does not make anything more affordable. That's the exact opposite of the express purpose. Thoughts, Margaret?
Well, some goods we don't produce.
Right.
Do we grow kiwis in the U.S.? Do we grow cocoa? Do we grow bananas? The answer is
We
no.
we don't have much coffee in the U.S. other than Hawaii, which, I mean, Kona, but that's about it, right?
So I guess the concept always behind tariffs was it would bring up the price of cheaper overseas product so that the American product, which was more expensive, would be more competitive in the marketplace.
And then there's products where there's no substitution.
Right.
Oh, so that's the ones we have to roll back because those are the ones that are affected the most.
Right, and that was the list I gave you, and that was part of the president's announcement. Coffee, tea, tropical fruits, cocoa, spices, banana, oranges, beef.
So I'm guessing either this administration or a new one could simply come in and say, okay, no more tariffs. We're rolling them all back. And is that practical? Are we too far into the game?
Well, if we look at the last 100 years of history in the U.S., the only time we've had really high tariffs was 100 years ago, and we know what happened to the markets then.
Yeah, they failed.
They failed.
Something great. A depression, I do believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Margaret Kidd is an adjunct professor at the University of Houston's Cullen College of Engineering and an expert on tariffs. Margaret, thank you for joining us again on Hello Houston.
And all your charts.
Thank you for hosting me.
Yes.